Driving involves risk. Risk that you might crash and that you or others could be hurt or even killed. There is a risk every time you get in a car. Good drivers try to reduce and manage the risk.
The best way to manage the risk is to be prepared. You can prepare by making sure you learn and understand about the road rules and safe driving, and by practicing driving as much as you can with your supervising driver.
It's also up to you to make good choices to reduce your risk on the road. It's really about being responsible for what you do and making smart decisions.
Although there's always risk involved in driving, there are some things that increase your risk on the road. Let's have a look at some of them now. Alcohol and drugs increase your risk on the road. Alcohol, drugs, and some medicines reduce your ability to drive safely. Any one of these can be really dangerous for you as a driver. Mixing them together is even worse. You are much more likely to be involved in a crash if you are affected by alcohol. Alcohol can make you feel very confident, so you feel likely to take more risks on the road. But it also reduces your skill level. This is very dangerous because you feel very confident, so you take more risks, but you are actually a danger to yourself and everyone else on the road. As a learner driver, you must have a blood alcohol concentration of 0. That means no alcohol under any circumstances. It is not about whether you feel drunk. If you've had anything to drink, don't drive. And remember, you may still have alcohol in your blood in the morning after a night of drinking. The police may request a driver to do a breath test at any time. This test will show if you have any alcohol in your blood. You must not refuse to do this test. There are large penalties for anyone who commits a drink driving offence. To avoid this risk, you need to plan ahead. If you want to drink, organise someone else to drive who stays alcohol and drug free. Stay the night rather than drive home. You could arrange to be picked up by a friend or relative, or you could use public transport or take a taxi.
Driving while using illegal drugs is an offence and seriously affects your ability to control a vehicle. Some drugs can make you very drowsy or slow to respond to the actions or vehicles of pedestrians around you. Other drugs like ecstasy might make you feel really confident as a driver, but also reduce your skill level, which is very dangerous. And some drugs might make you feel very awake, but when they wear off, you suddenly become very sleepy, which can be dangerous if you're driving. It's up to you to be responsible and stay away from alcohol and drugs when driving. Some medicines can affect your ability to drive safely. This can include prescription medicines and others bought in the pharmacy. The best person to ask about whether your medication might affect your driving is your doctor or pharmacist.
Using a mobile phone increases your risk on the road. You may think you can talk on the phone or send a text message without thinking, but the reality is that these are serious hazards. Even experienced drivers increase their risk of a crash by 4 times when using a mobile phone and by 23 times when texting. Learner and probationary 1 drivers are not allowed to use a mobile phone at all while driving. It's a good idea to turn your phone off or put it on silent when you're driving, so as you won't be tempted to answer it or send a text message.
Speeding increases your risk on the road. Speed is clearly linked with crashes. The faster you go, the more likely you are to have a crash, and speed increases how serious a crash will be. Speeding is even more risky for new solo drivers. There's so much to think about when you're driving. Controlling your car, scanning the road, looking out for possible hazards, and making the right decision for each situation. When you speed, you have less time to do all of this. You should never go over the speed limit, but sometimes it's a smart choice to drive a little bit under the speed limit to give yourself some extra time and space as you drive.
Fatigue increases your risk on the road. Fatigue is another word for being tired. It can be very dangerous to drive when you are fatigued. You could fall asleep while driving, it's difficult to concentrate, and the time you take to respond to situations becomes slower. Fatigue can happen when you haven't had enough sleep, you've been driving too long without a break, or when you drive at times when you'd usually be asleep. Some signs that you are fatigued are when you yawn a lot, you find a vehicle is drifting across lanes, your eyes keep closing or your vision becomes blurry, or you have trouble keeping your head up. Other signs of fatigue are when your speed increases or decreases without you meaning it. You find yourself daydreaming, or when you can't remember the last few kilometres of the road.
There are a few things you can do to reduce the risk of fatigue. If you're tired, stop and have a sleep. Even a 15-minute power nap can make a big difference. Don't drive when you usually be asleep, like between midnight and 6 a.m. Make sure any medicines you take don't cause drowsiness. If you're going on a long trip, make sure you get lots of sleep before you leave. Share the driving with someone else if you can. And don't start the trip after a long day at work. It's much better to have a good sleep and leave the next morning when you're refreshed. Make sure you take regular breaks during the trip.
Wearing a seatbelt reduces your risk on the road. If you do have a crash, wearing a seatbelt could save your life. Make sure everybody in your vehicle buckles up. And it's important that the seatbelts are adjusted properly so they fit well. Children need special restraints that fit their size and weight. They can't just wear adult seatbelts. And remember, most crashes happen on short trips, so wear a seatbelt, even just to drive around the corner.
Make good choices to manage and reduce your driving risks. It's your responsibility and your choice.